Welcome back to our channels, Warriors. We are still growing. If you haven't had your primas smash that subscribe button, go and have them smash it right now. 11,091 subscribers. 92 to be exact. Let me give a shout out to the following patrons. Louisa, Caligo, CharMandy, Robert, Johnny Lowe, Chevelle 66, Renso, GiGi, Abuelitas Journey, and DAUSHERRERO. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. If you guys haven't already considered subscribing to that Patreon, it's one way to help us grow. Please consider that. This episode right here is gonna be about something that I have yet to speak about, right? So many topics, I'm just grinding and grinding away. Well, what could that be, Hector? What haven't you talked about? The white inmate population. The whites, right? In prison, the gangs. The real deal. Centinela State Prison. I started my career at the California Department of Corrections in the year 2006. Right? Things were different back then. You'll never hear me claim to be an OG from back in the day, but surely things are different in 2006, right? Compared to 2023. When I touched down at Centinela, I didn't have any interactions with the whites until that yard flipped to level 4. Okay, Charlie yard. So that makes, reflecting back, that kind of makes sense now. I was in that gym with nothing but Southsiders and Paisas. So it does make sense that when they touched down, they were definitely about the business, okay? They were about the business. They were about the business. Well, Hector, what does being about the business mean? Let me tell you. Very organized, right? Like, I'm not going to go into rank structure or, unless you're living on planet Mars, you know who and what they operate under, right? The umbrella that they operate under. They were good at what they did, right? Sending messages, inflicting violence. By far, hands down, before I move forward, the whites, and this is not even anything to brag about, right? But the whites, in my opinion, made the best weapons by far. By far. Okay, that's not to say that nobody else made better weapons. That's not the truth. That's not the case. But every piece that I seen, every shank, it was no joke, man. Like the way that they would tie the bed sheet around the handle was like meticulous, right? Like I don't know, man. I don't know. Me personally, if I was gonna go stab somebody, I'll just get whatever I can get and just start dicing and these dudes took their time. Man, I don't know. Sometimes they would engrave stuff in there, like initials. They sent messages, right? And let's talk about the whites. Were they rolling deep? No, they were not rolling deep, right? Population-wise. Let's go from race. Who had the most numbers? Okay, Mexicans, Hispanics had the most numbers, followed by blacks, followed by whites, and then the others, okay? Asians, American Indians at times. So they were on the lower end of the spectrum as far as numbers, right? So that's something to be said. Such a small core group, yet the violence, man, the violence. And your boy can appreciate violence. And it's like, well, you're disgusting me, Hector. The audacity that says you can appreciate violence. No, well, I just had come back from Iraq, right? I saw some gruesome things. In prison, power at that time was established by violence. Right now, things have changed. It's about money. But then it was about just stabbing people, killing, right? So when I would observe them, they like 99.999% had shaved heads, right? Whether they were skinheads or not, right? Because to my understanding, there's different, well, for sure, there's different gangs, right? And not everybody represents the same thing, but in a way they do. It's kind of, right? It's kind of different. Like, you got your hardcore, like, white supremacist gangs. Then you got, like, well, you got, like, Peni Death Squad. You got, like, man, Orange County, the Sacramaniacs. You got San Diego, East County. You got all these factions, right? I think Long Beach, like, or Venice, I'm not sure, right? I'm not going to speak on something I don't know about as far as that. You would see their tattoos, right? So they were white. Clearly, they were white. The seriousness, right? The seriousness on their face. They didn't joke too much. They weren't chopping it up with the COs, right? Like, they weren't chopping it up. Like, the tattoos that I can recall was the boots on the sideburns, right? Whatever that represents. And I'm not, like, my memory is like a little hazy, right, when it comes to that, because that was in 2006. I'm talking about the real deal here, right? Donovan was a whole other different story. I'm gonna touch on that at the end of this video. The boots, the way that they would lace their boots like the ladder, right? Not like crisscross, right? People wear the Adidas with those big fat laces back in the 90s, right? I don't know. I thought it was cool. So the way they ladder them, the suspenders, like all these insignias, emblems, representation was part of that culture, part of that white gang. Like I said, I'm not gonna embellish too much because I didn't. I mean, all I seen was American History X, right? That's a great movie, by the way. Um, 420, I believe 420 was Hitler's birthday. They would celebrate Hitler's birthday, right? Just all kinds of Mein Kampf, right? Reading was encouraged, right? So it was interesting. They didn't run with the Mexicans. They surely didn't run with the blacks. They did their own thing, and I think they were respected because they were small in numbers and extremely violent, right? Not loose cannons. They were not loose cannons, right? Like, I talked about the incident when I was eating my mom's lasagna and it was downtime. The alarm goes off. They actually called a code 2 over the radio. When I get there, all I see is two bloodied to a pulp's bodies. Two bloodied, stomped out, stabbed out. They were stabbed out by those long screws type weapons, right? I got pictures somewhere around here. Every suspect had a knife, right? Like the ice pick types. They were the long screws. They did it behind Volk. Stabbed these dudes up. Clearly they meant to kill them. Clearly they meant to kill them, right? Well, I say they meant to kill him. Okay, if they want you dead, you're going to be dead, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe those guys got lucky. They probably got lucky, right? But it was a close call, for sure. For sure, right? And those that know when I'm saying close call know just how close you can get, right? You can get right there. I told you guys about the white, and this is Charlie Art Centinela, level 4. I told you about the big, white, weird inmate that touched down. He was kind of odd. He was an oddball. He was out of place. He was overweight. He had a beard that was scraggly. He had hair that looked like he just woke up next to a dumpster, right? The white told him. Because green is not blind. Green is not deaf. We know what's up, and we know we're like, oh, and we see somebody that shows up that's out of place. Everybody sees a dude out of place, right? And it's like, even the OG officers were telling me, that's not gonna fly right there. Oh, what do you mean? Watch. So, yeah, they gave the dude a heads up. Hey, clean your act up, man. You look like a scumbag. That guy disregarded their directions and instructions. Well, this little white Russian, a little guy, comes up behind him as they're coming out of chapel. Boom, hits the dude right in the windpipe, man. Because we saw it on the camera, on the surveillance camera. Drops him. Boom, right? Puddle of blood. Didn't kill him. That's what I'm saying. It's like, hey, they're going for it, right? Maybe that was just a message. What a way to send a message. I'll tell you that much. What a way to send a message, man. I would prefer a friendly. Well, they did give him an initial heads up. Dude disregarded it. Do not disregard them. Do not disregard them, right? That one. I told you guys about the big white boy. Somebody tapped into the comments and said that was his cellie and that he was actually a humble guy. I don't know about humble, but this white inmate comes in from yard with a weapon. Like they had orders to hit this cop. Clearly they had orders. Start stabbing the officer in the back of the neck. Boom, boom, boom. Partner's looking like, oh my God. Boom, boom, boom. Throws a knife, prones out, puts his hand behind his back. On that one, no force was used. I was like, what do you mean no force was used? But hey, the dude proned out. For all those saying that there's a green wall stomping people out, yeah, some situations have required that, right? Or has happened, right? This time, dude goes to town on the cop, throws a weapon, puts his hand behind his back. Here comes the responding officers, put handcuffs on him. Let's go, big guy. Take him through the hole, right? It was crazy. It was nuts. That's a true story. All of these are true stories. So I just told you about a bunch of stabbings with a little bit amount of white inmates. In ADSEG, the Southerners would sound off. Buenos dias, camaradas, woodpile, right? The whites would sound off. Good morning. It's crazy that I even remember that, right? And then they would show respect to each other. They would show respect to each other. Again, this was 2006, 7, and 8. The roll call, right? They would work out on the individual yards. You could hear them calling cadence. This is NADSEG. So it was very, you can say militant. You can use the word militant, right? You can use the word structured, but not in the way structured that you think. Like, hey, there wasn't like, hey, you're a sergeant, you're a lieutenant. It was more like, hey, we're all moving in sync. We're all orchestrated, right? And that's what it was. Racial tension, they would crack it off. It would crack off, right? Regardless if they wanted to or not, it would crack off. I've talked about white Crips. White Crips. Bravo Yard, Centinela, level 3 GP. A white Crip shows up on the yard. The officers tell me, the OGs, hey, it's going to be on and cracking. I've been doing this since the early 90s. Every time a white Crip comes off, they crack it off. Sure enough. They see them, it's like hate boils through their blood, right? Understandably on their part, their mindset, their mentality, their politics, whatever they don't like it. They see it, they don't like it. It's like a mosquito, and then the little blue light, it goes, right? And it's just on and cracking. Simply for being a white Crip. And then, yeah, a riot would ensue. All black inmates and all white inmates going together. And like I said, the blacks outnumbered the whites. For sure, they outnumbered the whites because they were I remember there wasn't much of them. They were there. So, it wasn't like about who was a clear winner or who's not. It was just about just going at it, right? Man, the tenacity, the violence. Donovan was a whole little nother rodeo, man. A whole nother little rodeo in itself. I'm trying to think if there was more incidents with the whites at Sentinel. There probably was. Not enough time to cover in this video. I can't. It wasn't a real prison, right? With the exception of when all those heavy hitters landed. Of course, it was the real prison. Then, I mean, yeah, the dynamics changed, right? It's like, oh wait, the bosses are in town. Let's get back to it, right? So there was a murder. There was a murder on one of the yards there right before I left. Three whites on one white. One dude was trying to make a name for himself. The other two, three they went along for the ride. Now they're facing forever in prison, right? Killed the dude. For sure killed the dude. And then I kind of gotta end this story this way, just to let you know where we're at, right? Where just a lot of things that I saw change and a lot of things, right? So this is what I saw. There was a riot between the blacks and the whites. Over there, for sure, the blacks outnumbered the whites, but this is also level 3, so that changes the dynamics. Plus, a newer generation of inmates. The whole dynamics changed, right? The blacks go off on the whites. Boom, attack them. They get the upper hand. They win, right? Yeah, they won. From like whatever winning is, they won, right? Beating the most people up. And shout out, man. People saying I don't give them props. Yeah, they smashed the whites. They smashed the whites, right? Smashed them. There. So there's no more lockdowns. All these year lockdowns are over. Think of the past, right? So they get locked up or whatever. But however, there was still some whites remaining on the yard. And this is what tripped me out, man. There was still some whites remaining on the yard. Because a riot isn't going to send you to ADSEC. 2 riots in a 12-month period will send you to the hole. That's the policy, the requirements. Okay. I was a lieutenant, because this was before I left. I was a lieutenant. Now, on that yard, man, there was a lot of spice going on, right? The black inmates were using a lot of spice, and it was just crazy, right? It was wild. I was on Delta Yard. This happened to be on A Yard across. I would always pay attention to the radio. And when things got crazy, I would always go over there. Like people who have been around kind of got that autopilot. Like, hey, things are sounding a little out of hand. Let's go. Ain't nobody got to tell us to let's go. We're gonna go look out for our buddies. We gotta go see what's going on, help them out. So that's what happened. I go over there. Yeah, you know they try to come at me crazy. You ain't gonna come at me crazy, right? Not because I'm Superman. You're just not gonna come at me crazy. Not gonna happen. And we're doing controlled yard recall, right? There was an incident. That sergeant, that lieutenant, they're now busy. I tell them, you mind if I help you out, right? I'm not trying to step on nobody's toes. I'll recall your yard. Let's do this. Tell the sergeants. The sergeants were rolling with me. They're really doing all the work, right? And the cops, the officers, they start recalling the yard, and there's blacks and there's whites on the yard, and they had just cracked it off. They had just cracked it off like days before. And I'm like, nothing's making sense to me, because I'm like, why? Why is there whites still on this yard? Why are they not taking flight? Like, what? I'm like not grasping the concept, right? Meaning they got jumped by the blacks, like smashed, handled, right? But like usually it goes back and forth. You hit us, we hit you. You hit us, we hit you. Okay, it's over. And I'm standing there, right? Like, and I wasn't trying to act hard. Like, I really didn't even have to act hard. I'm just standing there. And the inmate walks by me. And here's the crazy thing is, like, he looks at me and he goes, you don't have to look so tough. Right? Caught my attention. And I'm like, what? Hey, dude, what race are you? And he's like, white? And I'm like, why? And he just continued walking, right? And I'm like, I don't get it. Like I told the officer, like, hey man, if this was Centinela, they would have gone off on each other. But they're like just programming. Like to me, that you're losing that aspect, right? That aspect of they were once ferocious, once furious. I'm pretty sure they still are, up and down the state of California. But the officer tells me, I tell him like, hey, if this was then or somewhere else, the dudes would have got off, right? They would have got off. And he's like, oh yeah, well they're outnumbered big time here. I said, haven't you seen the movie 300? They were outnumbered. Right? I don't encourage violence. I don't encourage violence, right? Well, this is how we're going to end the message of the day. Those are my observations. That was my observations from 2006 all the way to 2022, right? I don't encourage violence in prison. Violence does control things. It does, unfortunately. Power, violence, money, it's crazy. My message for today, right? If violence, power, and money controls the inside, or negative ways, negative lifestyles, my message can be the same energy that you put into one, that force of energy, if you channel that energy into positive things, helping others, doing the right thing, lending a helping hand, mentoring the youngsters, you're going to get better results, and karma is going to come back in a good way and pay it forward. With that, keep pushing forward.